it's recording.
All right, Eugenia.
Hello.
Hi.
All right. We're gonna do our synthesis project. Jack and I are gonna ask questions to each other.
hmm
So I'm starting our timer. Sorry. Okay, Jack, I will start with you. Can you introduce the culture focus that you are going to be addressing in your project and the context?
hmm So, I have gotten a chance to meet a lot of like ethnicities, especially since I came to Minnesota like recently. But I was planning on focusing on the Korean population because that's the population that I was familiar with. But in Michigan, we don't have many Somalians people. So I thought that it'd be great that if I can get to know those populations a little bit more. So I chose Somali patient who's paraplegia. Like he can talk and then communicate, but he cannot move his extremities. So I just learned. I won't say like I learned a lot about like Somalians, but more than I learned a lot about like Islamic religious beliefs and faith. So, what about you? Who was your culture focus?
Yeah, I also was gonna go with something else. I was gonna focus on women and just like women's health in general. But after going to the Health Commons a few times this semester, I decided I would focus on people with marginalized housing and people with who are unhoused in our community. I think so. I work about 5-ish minutes away from the Health Commons downtown. And the people who have come to the health commons, I see in town. Like when I get to work, I see them outside of our
Yeah.
emergency room. So I thought it would be a good way to kind of learn a little bit more about the community that I'm very involved in and see like who they are and learn more about them. And I've had really interesting conversations with really interesting people at the health
Mhm.
commons. So it's been cool.
That's good.
Cool.
Um, I could ask you the second question. So, when you're learning about them, like, how did you like chat with them? Like, what did you have to do?
Yeah. So basically, I let them. So some people I know don't really like to chat. So they come in, they get what they need, and they leave. And then a few people, they'll kind of hang around. So those are usually the individuals that I will, go see and like, is there anything I can get for you? And like start asking them some questions. So, um, one guy, he called himself a troublemaker the second he walked in. So I was like, interesting. Tell me more, and that's kind of like the people who are willing to be chatty are the people that I go for because I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable at all by asking them a whole bunch of questions. But yeah, what about you, Jack? How did you go about interviewing, if you would? How did you learn your information about the Somali culture?
I was like, if I'm being honest, I was a little hesitated, like, to having a like chat with like paraplegia patient, especially like because I didn't want to burden them. Like, he's such a great young fellow man, but I was like kind of worried that like if I'm like going off of from the like patient and the nursing, like the boundary. So I was like, I asked him like, hey man, like, can I ask you a few questions? It's gonna be personal. I want to know about you and your family. And it was like, oh yeah, of course, don't worry about it. But it was like more than like 30 an hour mini conversation, so he kind of got annoyed at the end. But like I was just asking about like how, because for an Asian culture, like for Korean culture, the oldest son has like a lot of expectations. So I was asking like how does the like each family members like function as, and then like of course I'm gonna talk a little more about like in those after questions, but those are something that I heavily relied on, like how does family function works and how their religious background is affecting their like roles as a family members, but also being like one member of a community,
Yeah.
like known as like their Islamic beliefs. So yeah, it was just I just sat down next to him, and then I like almost whispered in his ear so he can't hear. So I'm like, "Hey, so tell me about your brother," and then he'd be just telling me all those like things. So I think that it was a really good conversation. I think he enjoyed it. So we had I got some decency of knowing them. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
Are you, for our next question, are you able to share an example of a lived experience as that he shared with you?
Yeah. So I was just talking about it, but so he has mother and father, but who was divorced. So he was telling me about his dad's side is living in Europe.
Mhm.
So they speak Dutch. They speak English, but not Somalians. So but he's living with his mother and then his younger brother. So and he was just telling me about like his mother works at a restaurant like overnight. So that's why he needs like nurses like 24 hours, needs to take care of him. But it was kind of like hard to hear because he doesn't have a dad like living in a house. So he says like a dad is usually in the Islamic culture, like dad has like a lot of power and like those like kind of like decisions maker. But they're not in like to do that. So his mother is not also like, I mean, he's just in his room all the time, 24 hours. So he says he's sharing his limitations and expectations, like from his family members, like, but he feels like really sad and bad about them. Like he said, like he doesn't know how long he's gonna last like this.
Mhm.
So he was just sharing a lot of his like personal like burdens from
Mhm.
his side, which I felt pretty like devastated about it. But yeah, financial problem is the biggest factor for his entire family. His brother cannot do anything but working, same as his mother too. So it's really sad that like his family cannot get so much help from the government
Mhm.
for some reason. He was telling me about it, but he didn't tell me in detail why he cannot get supports. But yeah. But what about you?
Well, that's really sad. Um, no, one of the conversations I had with a lady, she's been working on getting stable housing and she's been in and out of different houses. But one thing that really like stood out to me is she was telling me a story about how this was closer to Thanksgiving, but she was telling me how she was inviting her family over, her dad, her parents over for a pot roast. And she was so excited. She was gonna make, she got new housing, like she felt very excited. And she was inviting them over and they abused her as a kid. And there's just a very traumatic history there. But they kept like basically almost not giving her a clear response. And she was very positive, very like, you know what, I'm gonna make pot roast, I'm gonna share with my neighbors, it's gonna be fun. If my family doesn't want to come be with me, I'm still gonna have a good day. And I honestly was just like, I was watching her in awe because I was like, how do you go through so much? Like she just kept telling me terrible things after terrible things. And I'm like, how are you going through so much with such a positive attitude? And that's just I love to see in the communities because like yeah, they they go through so much shit and
Yeah,
they just yeah, they keep powering through it. So yeah.
yeah. So the next questions there's a lot of questions, but I could ask like, is there like anything that you noticed like how how their culture and like community is healing, or how the traditions or knowledge is passed along,
Yeah.
and what's it like for that individual kind of a person to live in this kind of a social economic system?
Yeah, no, I think when it comes to like just like knowledge and healing, a lot of people who come to the health commons are very like community based. Like they're very much let me help you or no, I don't need three band-aids, I only need one, give the other two to somebody else or just like, no, I don't need, this big tube of bacitracin. Give me the tiny one and give the big one to somebody else. It's just so like community based. And Amy has told us stories about the guy who will like watch our medication cart because he doesn't want someone else to, get into it. And it's just like they're protective of themselves, but they're also protective of each other. And I think that's how like information gets passed along. It's word of mouth. It's, hey, watch out for XYZ.
Yeah,
They go here because these people are nice, like people who come to the health comments and they're like, it's my first time. And you can tell like they were referred. Someone said, come here because this is a good place to be. So
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. What about you? How do you feel like people in the Somali community like hold that knowledge and pass along the knowledge of their culture and healing?
I was actually quite surprised, like how, because if I'm not trying to be very judgy, but when I first think about like Islamic religious, like I'll be thinking, like violency and like such those like that because that's what we see on the news. But I just learned that those people are the only like radical and very few people who does that. But so like those like little things like just kind of covers my eyes and just only like make me see them like that. So what I really learned is that they're super like family bonded people, like, and then those groups of families become of community, and in those community they help each other and that they like support each other, and then they're just I was just surprised like how I can't also to remember the name of their own Bible. I can't think of it. Quran or something.
Ron, yeah.
It's they heavily focus their beliefs on that. It's not like, oh, like, I'm a Christian, but I'm a Christian. I go to the church. I read Bible sometimes, but they literally on their time to pray, and they're reading the Quran like to remind themselves like how they should view the world and how they should treat people like to each other. And then, but he was telling me that that is really still difficult for Islamic people, especially in the United States, because people do not view the Islamic people in such great ways like they would do in like an Arab or like Middle East countries. So he was telling me the burden about that, and then but because of his condition and situation, those like community connections been hard and difficult for his family, and then like this financial burden is like the biggest factor for them. It's just so I think that was like the thing that I learned, but it's family bonded, and then those knowledge and healing is like coming along from their family lines, and but especially focused on their religious belief. So yeah, I think I'll say their religious is a connector for their people. So number 5, can you tell me like 2 to 3 like social structural dimensions of their people?
Yeah, I'm gonna focus, I think, on the economic factors for people who are unhoused. I will also focus on the political and legal factors because there's a lot of discourse going on, especially now. And I think I also want to focus on the kinship and social factors and just kind of exploring more on how they connect with each other and um how they are in their community. But yeah, what about you? What are the 2 to 3 cultural and social dimensions that you are focusing on?
Um, First one is the religious, because I talked a lot about religious factors already, and then economic factors because of their financial problem. Um, like I want to know like what's like blocking them like getting support, and what's like not allowing them, like when it's compared to like other white people, like those kind of gaps I want to talk about. And then I'll say I was only thinking of about those two, but I could talk about the social too, because since they're a lot heavily focused on with the community relationship, but they're not really in one anymore. So I want to talk about that.
And
Yep.
then what about some care expressions, patterns, and practices about holistic health that you identified while you were chatting with him?
Mm, I want to talk about this little sad moment that he when he talked about his death. Um, he told me that like he's so close to being death, but all this medication, all this ventilator, all these tools are the only lines that's helping him. And then, so he was telling me that he doesn't know that if it's like better to be dead already or like to continue to like maintain his lives like that.
Mm,
So he told me that in Islamic culture, like the death is not like only seen as a death, but it's also can be seen as a very um, how do I say, like there's a brave way to die, and there is like a religious way to die, like all this different kind of a deaths. But he was telling me about, he was joking about like some Islamic jokes, so I'm not gonna go talk about it. But he was just telling me that like his presence of like life is a burden to his family, but his mother also told me that like she's so happy that he's still alive like that. So like yeah, like the dying is like the thing that I learned about. I mean, from his side, he understands like his religious own part, but he's also telling me about himself as a human too. So, and then I could talk about like the holistic health. They're also the same, but they're really important about the spirit.
mm,
So, so they were telling me about like the reason they're praying is that that's like the spirit that's still connected, like them to his God. So yeah, the I'll say it's the soul versus spirit. What about you?
Yeah, I think I would focus on one, just like recognizing how resilient and strong and um just like so so incredibly strong people are, especially people who are unhoused, because like I said, they just keep going through so much, but they keep showing up with a positive attitude. So I think their resilience is what I would focus on. And then also, yes, probably holistic, just like holistic healing and understanding that, some basic needs are not met because they don't have housing, but they are still, taking care of their health and having autonomy over their health when they, especially
Mhm.
when they come to us with the health comments. Yeah. We
So,
are 7 and we have a 2-minute timer.
okay, the last question then. As a nurse, what's important for you to carry like a relationship with individuals like them or a community for you?
Yeah, for me, I think just like one understanding that, like I was mentioning a little bit before, like some of their basic needs are not being met because they're not housed or they're unhoused or they're not stable housed. So understanding that while they're here to take care of, their elevated blood pressure because they have increased levels of stress, because they don't have stable housing, like there's layers and layers to it. They're not just here because they have an elevated blood pressure. Like there's more to it. And a lot of them will write it down and take it back to their doctor. So just like, again, understanding the context of
Hmm.
this population and knowing that there's a lot of added stressors that affect their health. And
Yeah,
me as a nurse, understanding that is a great way for me to provide better care. But
yeah.
yeah, what about you? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. You know, like in this class, like we wrote about, like we had to read about like biased that book. So
Mhm.
like I wrote a pretty interesting thesis statement. I said bias is learned. It's and then I mean of course I wrote more about it, but like when I was talking with him, I said it is learned, and then it is like our like responsibility how we express so people don't get hurt. That's I think that was mine like thesis, like similar to my thesis statement. But when I think about Islamic, like I already have a bias in my eyes, like how I see them and how I like feel about them if I see them as my patient. So I think for nurses, it's important for us to like try to remove those perspectives. Every human is just a human, and that they have their different backgrounds, and then it is our responsibility of how we see them and view them but still treat them as the same person, as a nurse, and for them as be a patient. So yeah, I think that's one really important factor. I'll be quick. Sorry, I know that we are over
Oh,
20 minutes.
we're good. We're
Okay,
14 seconds away, but yeah, that is our
perfect.
discussion. I will end the recording now.
Thank